Hey everybody, Anthony here, and I'm back with my end of the year bonus episodes. I did this last year; it was a lot of fun, and just wanted to kind of hop on and share my thoughts on the stuff I liked the most throughout the year 2025. So it is currently January 3rd when I'm recording this, so the year is fully done. There's nothing sneaking at the end. I know a lot of people record these things in like early mid December, and I try not to because the most amount of free time I have all year is over the winter break. Just no interruptions, no clients, no schoolwork, nothing. Like everything's done. So I get a chance to play a lot of stuff that maybe I hadn't gotten to yet. Doesn't always mean that it makes it onto my list, but there's almost always like two or three games that I'm like, I'd really like to play that before I finalize, right? There are, in fact, two games that I had not had a chance to play as much as I would like that I did get in over the break and they did make it onto my list. So, bam, bam. There you go. If you're listening to this, it means you're a Patreon backer. So you're awesome. Thank you so much. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be recording not only this, but also videos for. I say video. This is you're probably listening to this on audio, but also recordings for my top movies of the year, top video games, and depending on what the list looks like, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Top TV shows. Um, I like to be very reflective at the end of the year. It's not really a content thing. Um, you can tell because it's not it's not on the main podcast feed. Um, but there will be an article on the website. So like if you want to read all this or share it with people, you can. I'll have my top 10 up on the website here. Um, probably sometime in the next few days. It will not be different than what you're listening to though. So you've got all the good stuff here. So I have here 10 games that stuck out to me. This was a weird year. If you've listened to our BGA Awards episode, you know that already. Um, we didn't have like the last 2 years. I feel like we're like real bangers. Like my number one game of all time, after we retired War of the Ring, that came out 2 years ago in Voidfall. Last year, 7 of my top 10, maybe 8. There's one teetering there, are now on my top 100 list. I don't think, and this is not me trying to downplay the list this year. These are all really good games, but looking at this top 10, I think maybe two will make one right now would go into the top 100. Like it's that good. It's my number one, which we'll get to. But it's possible only one more of these, really. And it's not even number two. So we'll get into why that is. But overall, though, I do think it was like an interesting year. There's a lot of like different types of stuff. And part of what happened, I think, and we talked about this on the podcast, is there was a drop off in stuff making it to the US. Like the tariff situation kind of scrambled everybody's calculus starting in April. And the result of that is a lot of people just held back on stuff. Things didn't get produced or printed. Some things got printed or produced. They stayed in Europe, haven't made it over here yet, so I haven't played it. Like I was watching the Man versus Meeple top 10, and I think of their 10, I had played like 2 or maybe 3 because a lot of those games just aren't here yet. And that's to some degree that's normal. You get a lot of stuff out of Essen that doesn't make it here until the spring or the summer. But the last decade or so, it's been getting better. Like stuff comes over a little faster. Like Civolution last year, I got that in December. Right? I don't think I didn't like it enough to put it on my top 10, and I don't think I played it in full until like early January. But it it kind of it made it over. Like they published it quickly. This year, we didn't really get a lot of that. A lot of stuff. Looking at the list, I'd say actually surprisingly low number. Less than half are crowdfunded. The others kind of popped up out of nowhere, and there's a handful of like big ones. The other big theme for me this year was licensed games. 4 of my top 10 are licensed games, which is the most that I've ever had. I often have licensed games. My favorite game is a licensed game with War of the Ring. But typically there's like 1 or 2 that stand out. This year there was a whole bunch. So I find that pretty interesting. The other interesting thing is just there's a lot of like 2.0s, second editions, re-releases hitting the shelves this year. And I, again, looking at my list, 3 or 4 of these are that, right? They're like re-implementations of older, 4, at least 4, are re-implementations of older systems in new formats, right? So games are a uniquely iterative form, right? Like if you're making a video game that costs $100 million to produce, you need to justify its existence. It can't just be like, well, it's like this one, but we added a couple things, which, to be fair, happens all the time. But people tend not to be as excited about those. They sell a lot, but they're not like, this is, critically amazing. In board games, you get kind of the chance to like look at a completed text and say, like, well, how can I build on that? How can we improve that? How can we amplify that? And it just, I don't think it has like the negative connotations that maybe it does in other media. Like if somebody remakes a game, a video game, it's often labeled separately. Like this is a remake, right? With a few exceptions, like Resident Evil games are really fully remade. Movies get remakes. People like them. They make money, but they also kind of get put into a separate category, right? Like a Disney live action remake is not going to be up for an Oscar, right? The original movie, maybe, but not the new one. So I think that was an interesting part of this year as well. So before I dive into my top 10, just a handful of games that I played this year that I didn't hate, but didn't quite make the list. We have Railroad Tiles. I talked about this a couple months ago. This is again, like a 2.0. This is a tile laying grid reimplementation of Railroad Inc. There you go. Those are the words I'm looking for. And the result of that is actually really interesting, especially for people who don't like rolling rights. It also removes a lot of the luck and randomness because the tiles are out in a tableau for people to draft. And there's also like some different elements to keep track of as you're laying stuff out, as well as some ways to make the game more complex. So I think it's a more interesting game than Railroad Inc. I think the base set is a little vanilla. This was a Kickstarter campaign, so obviously there's a whole bunch of additional content that makes the game better and more interesting, which I'm not a fan of, but you wouldn't do poorly to pick this up. I think it's a good game. Another one that I really liked this year that didn't quite make my list was Toy Battle. Toy Battle is just a real quick 2-player back and forth kind of combat style game from Paolo Mori. And it seems like a nothing, right? It takes 20 minutes. It's 2 players only. But there's a lot of depth here that comes, in the complexity. It feels like an abstract game, but then it has some of these elements of like area control. So it's like Small World mixed with Santorini or something. And so I really had a lot of fun with that. Another one I really liked in theory, but didn't give the greatest review to because of how I was planning on playing it, is Roth. Roth from Chip Theory Games looks beautiful, right? It's got this neo cyberpunk neon 80s style artwork, which is just so unique and so amazing, combined with Chip Theory production value, right? You have these asymmetrical factions in an area control game, also very cool, utilizing both dice and mini like little token dudes. All of that's fantastic as well. The main thing that this does that I don't love is that it says it's cooperative. And the cooperative version, the solo version in particular, is not good. It's super imbalanced. And I don't like to say games are imbalanced because unless I played it 30 times, I don't feel like I can say that. But I do feel like Chip Theory, being a company that all of their games play solo, felt the need to add this on. I'm not sure. I don't want to say that. I don't know. But it just doesn't work for me. So I think I gave this game a dodge from my perspective as a like solo co-op gamer. But having played the multiplayer, that's really fun. So it was like a weird in between. Like I almost put it on the list even based on that. But I didn't because I just couldn't bring myself to do. Like I really didn't like the other version, so I can't do that. All right, folks. So let's dive in. This is the top 10 for 2025. I realize if you're watching this, especially, it's a bit of a mess back here, and it's stressing me out. So I'm just gonna move my sweatshirt out of the way. And it's still a mess, but now it's like fun stuff mess, not just clothing. So first up, we have number 10, this is the first licensed game that popped on the list. Mistborn, the deck building game. This came in, it technically came out in 2024, right? I think people could get it if you pre-ordered it from Brotherwise, and it released fully at is it Dragon Con, Dragon World, Dragon Steel, whatever the Brandon Sanderson conference is, in early December. But I didn't get my copy as a pre-order, just it didn't come in until January, so I'm considering it for this year. This is a unique deck building game in which you can play cards based on the different metals that are available to you, and then you fire them accordingly. So it's really based on the mechanic, the magic system mechanic of the book series. The deck building itself is fairly straightforward, but because you have to manage those different metals, and because there's different ways to use them, and you can overuse them and kind of surge through that, there's a really interesting element to that. The multiplayer version of the game, playing with 3 or 4 players, is a little clunky, because you do have like attacking versus building mechanics, and anytime you have attacking in a deck building game with more than 2 players, it gets a little wonky because people kind of team up on someone. But at a lower player count, cooperative or solo, game is fantastic, and it really captures so many of the elements of that book series, to the point where I started rereading it this year. So don't have a ton of time to read, but it just really, like, I was like, oh wait, I remember that character, but what was their deal again? Did they die? I don't remember. So I really wanted to like read back through that. So this game really captured my attention. It's hit the table a few times, I will admit, typically solo, but it just, for a game based on a book series, it doesn't tend to work. It works. So big fan. Number 9 on the list is one of those games I mentioned that I just played relatively recently, Flamecraft Duels. I picked this up at PAX Unplugged for my daughter, and because she's a big Dragon fan, and we've played Flamecraft a few times. And it is, has all the artwork from Flamecraft. It has all the types of dragons. Thematically, it's the same, but the gameplay mechanics are very different. So in the game, you pull a little disc out of the bag. It represents a certain type of dragon. You put it onto the player board, which is just a hex grid. You can stack up to 3 high, and you're trying to build different patterns of these dragons in threes to complete one of the 2 cards you have in front of you, one of the 2 contract cards. You can complete both on any turn, so it's really like manipulating and setting yourself up. It's also about like trying to block what your opponent's doing, and you don't know what their cards are, but if you can see them kind of pushing things in a direction, you can go over there and kind of block it. Although playing with an 11-year-old, I try not to do that too much. The base game is fine. It's like a quick, simple, abstract game. Takes like 20 minutes. Where the game really sings is you start layering in like the fountain cards, which are shared goals, or you layer in the fancy mode where you have like ongoing abilities that you can access and pay money to access. And that's really cool. The game really gets really interesting when you add on those layers. It's quick, it's accessible. It is only 2 players, which I'm fine with that. I know some people are like, I don't know about that. But it's a cool way to re-implement that whole idea of get these resources to match this contract, but now you're doing it in kind of the shared dueling space, and it moves so quickly. So really liked Flamecraft Duels quite a bit. Number 8 is a game that popped up on my radar like back in like June or July, and I tried to pick it up, and it was out of print. I think it was hard to find. It's Rio Grande. They often like, oh, everybody bought our game, I guess we'll make more. Moon Colony Bloodbath. Now, when it first released, I ignored it because the artwork is terrible, and not like terrible, ha ha ha, look, we're being terrible, but like just really bad. And I feel bad about saying that because somebody did the artwork, but it's just, it doesn't work. It's just, I know what they're going for. They're going for like the retro, like B movie plot. Everybody dies in a space battle type thing, but I really, really didn't like it. So I ignored it for a while. But then I saw it popping up on a few lists, after the convention season, and I was like, well, I have budget. I hadn't bought a game in like 2-3 months. I'm like, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try this game out because it sounds interesting, and it is. I haven't talked about it on the podcast because I played the most of this. I played in December, and we haven't really reviewed any games recently. But it's a game in which you have a deck of cards that cycles through. This is like, and every round you don't get to choose what you're doing. You're going to pull a card from the deck, and then something's going to happen. In that deck are 4 cards with actions on them, so you get to take actions 4 times each round. But that deck gets bigger every round, so you're taking fewer actions and you're responding to more bad stuff. Like early on, there isn't that much bad stuff. Like there are no events in there, there's no robots in there, there's a couple twists, but for the most part, you're just taking actions, right? So you have to build up an engine, because one of the possible actions you can take is to build a room or a building on your moon base. And these will correspond to other actions, right? So you're building up this engine, they're kind of interacting with each other, and maybe you're powering up like your mining action now. Like when you take a mining action, it does 6 things or something. Um, but at a certain point, things start to take people away from your colony. So you start with 30 people, they start to die. You can get new ones in various abilities, but not very many. So the buildings themselves have people on them. And once you run out of people and you need more, you start destroying buildings. So you have to build an engine that mitigates that loss, manages things like hunger, and then scales down slowly enough that you can make it to the end. I have yet to beat the game. If you play it solo, you have to get through all 13 event cards, and the event cards only go into the deck 2 per round. So you have to make it through 7 rounds. That's really hard. I got to 12 just a couple days ago. I was very proud of myself. If you're playing with other people, you just keep doing that. Some people just lose out, and the last person standing wins the game, which is also interesting. And it doesn't take as long as it seems like. It's not a player elimination game in the sense that you're gonna have to like go walk around the house for half an hour. It's fun. It's an engine building and destruction game, and I've played something similar to this, but nothing quite like this. It's very clever. I just wish the artwork was better. I know, and then it just came out. They're not going to fix it, but I'm like, could you just make better artwork? This would be. It's not pleasant to look at. Number 7 is the Lord of the Rings: Fate of the Fellowship. When they announced this at the beginning of last year, I think it was like February or March. Chris joked about how I would eventually pick it up and I would like it and blah 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 blah, and he was right. I honestly don't have too much to say about this. It is pandemic in Middle Earth, duh, right? Um, it uses a lot of those mechanics, but it also removes a lot of the mechanics. So like you don't have the overrun mechanics. You can have like 10, 15 troops, from the shadow people. The wow. You can have those in any given city, and that's fine. It just makes it harder to get rid of them. And the goal of it is to move the ring down into Mordor. Although you can play games without that goal if you want to kind of mix in other stuff. Um, the real interesting part of this game is not the core mechanics and how they tweak them, because it kind of feels a little bit like Rise and Fall of Rome. What the way it feels like is you have to manage these 4 different events, right? So like when you're first playing, you have these 3 events, and then you have the destroying the ring. You have to do the other 3 before you can destroy the ring, and that involves managing several different fronts on the board. It really does feel like a Lord of the Rings game, and boiled down because it takes less than an hour. There's a lot there. You get a lot out of it. It comes with fantastic production quality, like this great Barad-dûr dice tower, which is fantastic. Um, and ultimately, I enjoy it. Like, it's not doing anything amazing or exciting. It's kind of expensive. It's like $80. And it's still a pandemic system game at the end of the day. So it's cooperative, and you're gathering cards, and you can have a hand limit, and you swap those cards with each other when you're in the same location. Like those core elements are all there. So if you like Pandemic and you like Lord of the Rings, it's a no-brainer. If you don't like Pandemic, I don't think the game is different enough to overcome that. But um, I have had a couple people tell me differently. So I it's one of those funny things. I put it in the middle of my list because I do like it quite a bit. I played it a lot, but I don't have a lot to say about it because it's just not it's not like an exciting pick. This is like when you'd say like my favorite movie of the year was this new Marvel movie. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I mean, I'm sure it was good. I'm sure it was well made, but there's nothing that exciting about it. Everybody's seen it. Uh, so yeah. Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship at 7. Number 6 is Shackleton Base, A Journey to the Moon. I have another moon game here. This one, a little less dying on the moon, a little more capitalism on the moon. In this game, you are sending up the colonists and really their workers, and engaging with these 3 different corporations. The really interesting thing about the game, though, is it comes with 8 corporations in the box, and you just pick 3 per game. So when you play it, you pick the 3 you want to work with, and then you interact with them accordingly. And that's pretty cool because every game's different. I forgot what the combination number is, and I haven't taken a math class in 20 years, but a couple dozen different combos here, maybe many more. I don't know. But I certainly haven't done them all, of the ways it can build out. And it has a really cool way you interact with the board and like how you're activating different actions. And those different actions mean different things depending on the corporations that are in play. It's very clever. It's a great little puzzle. It's one of those games I look at and I'm like, wow, that's so fun and so interesting and so clever. Why don't I like it a little bit more? And I don't know. I think it's just a little bland thematically. Where Moon Colony Bloodbath took a big swing and missed. This one just doesn't take much of a swing. It's kind of flat. And I guess I'm just reaching that point where I'm like, I want everything in the game to work. I want it to be pretty and fun and engaging and interesting. And I've had a lot of those games recently, so give me more. And Shackleton Base isn't quite that, but it is a great game. I have a lot of fun with it. Obviously, it's my number 6. And I keep returning to it. Like I put it up and I'm like, I'm good with this. And like 2 weeks later, I'm like, actually, I kind of want to try that again and see this combination and see how it plays. All right, top half of the list. Number 5. This is A Place for All My Books. Pick this one up at PAX Unplugged. So this is another late addition to the list. And it is a game about building a book collection, which is fun. And you get the opportunity to take these little book tiles and they're different colors and you stack them around your room. And there's like a lot of spatial elements there. Like there's different rooms in the house, even though it's just a grid, and those rooms are like tetromino shaped. And then you also have the opportunity to go into town and buy more books or swap them or borrow them from the library. The real interesting part of the game, though, is that you have a social battery. And that social battery, it maxes out at 19 and it goes down real fast. So to build it, you need to do stuff in your home with your collection. To spend it, you leave the house. And there's a little overemphasis, I think, on that component of the game. I think it's very clever. I love it as an introvert. I was like, I feel this. This is me. But the real core of the game is like the pattern matching and contract completion components of building your collection, right? So it is a tableau builder / puzzle game that has this really cool side mechanic that I think is really interesting. So I love it for both those reasons. I think thematically it's really interesting. It visually it's compelling. Like all those things I said about Moon Colony Bloodbath and Shackleton Base being kind of dim to look at. Place for All My Books is the opposite. Like the theme and visuals perfectly match how I feel playing the game, and that's just a really nice place to be. So that's my number 5, Place for All My Books. Number 4 is a game that I picked up, probably shouldn't have. It was really expensive back in the spring, and it sat on my shelf most of the year because I tried to learn it a couple times and it was too complicated. This is a game that kind of hit my table fully once I got some time in December. The Elder Scrolls, Betrayal of the Second Era. And you're saying, I know, number 4, and you only played it in December? Yeah, it's that good. So this is from Chip Theory Games, and this is another one of those 2.0s I was talking about. And I guess I was kind of skipping over those. Flamecraft Duels, Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship, Elder Scrolls, Betrayal of the Second Era being another one. So it's building on Too Many Bones, which is Chip Theory's big hit, kind of their breakout hit from 10 years ago at this point. And it takes the theme of the Elder Scrolls, that world, the video game world, and it layers it over the top of it, and it makes a lot of changes as well. And so on one end, it is an exploration game, an adventure game, where you're going out with this custom-built character that you have, and you are fighting things and exploring and lockpicking and doing stuff in the world, and it's cool, right? You're doing cool things. On the other end, it really, really leans into like the character building component of the Elder Scrolls, which I think, Too Many Bones has some of that, but they really like go fully all in. Like, you have a dozen different races to choose from. You have more than a dozen different uh, classes to choose from. You have tons of skill lines to choose from with different dice types. You choose how many dice you're going to have based on building those things up and how you spend your experience. Like, I don't think I've ever played a board game that has so much character customization to the point where I kind of just want to keep restarting, right? Like, a full game of this would be 3 playthroughs to get through a campaign. That's what they want you to do. I've kind of reset 3 times to the beginning just to build out a new character. And I'm, a couple times gotten to the end to see where they end up and those final battles. But it's just such a fun experience to build up that character and make sure it all works and has it flows together. The one issue I have is the game unapologetically isn't super balanced for just like playing as one character. So you're playing the game solo. The tutorial and the rulebook don't explicitly say it, but they kind of hint at it. The tutorial's a little more explicit. They say you probably want 2 characters. The problem with having 2 characters, it's doable. It's fine. Like, multi-handed plenty of solo games. But the problem I end up having is I really want to focus in on min-max 1 character. And it's hard to do that with 2 without it taking a really long time. So I've kind of, after the first couple plays, I'm like, no, I'm going to do 1, but it is harder. Um, so there's that. I don't know, different people's mileage will vary. I think I'll get better at it. I have gotten better at it. But I'm still enjoying it regardless. So that is something to keep in mind. I would imagine playing this with the 4 people would take a long time. I have not done it yet. But I do plan to, because I think it'll be fun just to see how everybody else characters build out and how you can interact with each other and how you can have those conversations, right? Like, oh, you can pick up a new skill line. Well, we really need somebody who has like a ranged attack that shoots in a straight line, because right now it kind of balloons out, and that ballooning out is hitting people on our team. We really need some like laser focus. Someone get magic missile, right? It's a lot of fun. So Betrayal of the Second Era, honestly, when they first announced it, I'm like, I'm not gonna like that game, because I did not like Too Many Bones at all. And then I'm not a huge Elder Scrolls player. I played Skyrim like everybody else, but that's really it. And for whatever reason, maybe it was around my birthday or something, and I just spending the monies. But Betrayal of the Second Era, I picked it up. I think someone local just had it post Kickstarter, and just sat there for a while. So it really came down to like, I should play this before the end of the year, because everybody's talking about it. And I'm so glad I did. And honestly, I don't know that I would have had the time to do it any other time during the year, because it took all day on a Sunday to learn how to play. Like, the tutorial app in Dized is great, but it's very long. It was like 6 hours. So the game does not take 6 hours to play. It just took a long time to learn all the rules. So, there you have it. Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, number 4. Number 3, another 2.0-ish game from Garphill Games, The Anarchy. So this one is kind of building on Hadrian's Wall, which was a roll and write game about Hadrian's Wall. In this one, you're dealing with kind of full craziness, the anarchy, as it were. I didn't pull up like the history of this, so I don't have it off the top of my head. But these kind of more solo-oriented games from Garphill tend to be historically focused. West Kingdoms, all that stuff. Like, those are like made-up kingdoms that are kind of analogous to real-world areas. This is like specifically a historical period, right? Same as like Legacy of You, Hadrian's Wall, Skara Brae. Those are all like specific times and period in time. So the anarchy is that you have 2 big old giant sheets of paper, and you're checking off all these little boxes, and they all chain into each other. But you're also like physically building out a little castle to defend against invaders who are coming at different angles and different attacks. So there's like a more tangible component to the game that isn't there in a lot of roll and write type games. This is by far the most complex of these I've played. Every time I say that, someone's like, what about Twilight Inscription? Twilight Inscription is not actually that complicated. It's just long, right? It has the 4 different sectors, but it's really like 4 different sets of rules, and they kind of all blend together. It's not that complicated of a game, but it takes 90 minutes to 2 hours, which is really long for a roll and write. The anarchy, you're not even really rolling. It's more flippish, and then you are writing constantly. And then the way you do interact with the randomness is very mitigated. It's a heavy strategy game in which you happen to be writing on sheets of paper. So I love it as a heavy strategy game. I think it's fantastically designed. It's really interesting, and it just happens to be one where you write stuff down, right? And some people don't like that, and that's fair. Like they're not going to play that, and why should you if you don't like that mechanic? But I do like that mechanic, and I think it's interesting to see how far we can push it. How hard can it get? How much stuff can we ask a player to keep in their head, right? It reminds me of the first time I played Fleet, the dice game, which also has 2 sheets of paper and is also like somewhat complex for a roll and write. And at the time, I was like, oh, wow, this is the best roll and write I've ever played. It's got complex ideas and they're interacting with each other. And that just feels like Play-Doh in a sandbox compared to the Anarchy. And I still like Fleet the Dice game, just but like the complexity level, it's just increased so much. The iteration we've seen in this genre is amazing. So that's why it's my number 3. Number 2 on the list is the third in a trilogy of games from Fabio Lopiano. It's IR, Children of the Sun. So this is a game about South American mythology and kind of the origin story of the sun and moon and the development of the civilization. And it's similar to Sankore. It's similar to Merv. In that you have a limited number of actions and they're relatively simple, straightforward actions, but the complexity comes in how they are performed and engaged. Sankore is by far the most complex of those. I love Sankore. It's in my top 100. It was on my top 10 list that year. IR Children of the Sun is I don't know if it's the lightest. Merv is pretty simple, but it's down there. Like it's pretty straightforward. Like the actions you take are pretty straightforward. You have separate little arenas where they take place. What really matters is kind of chaining those together, the order in which you're doing them, how you interact with the player board, and how those actions kind of diminish over time because every round, one of the paths you can go on and take actions goes away, it retires, right? So you start with 5, and by the last round of the game, it's just that one. And especially in a higher player count game, that can really limit the actions you're allowed to take. So you really have to plan accordingly, you have to think accordingly, you have to determine when you think those tracks are going to retire because you score points based on kind of guessing in advance where you think it's going to happen. And that decision space, the way it expands, the way it builds, the way it forces you to think both about right now and what's going to happen like in a round or two, that's what really captured me about the game. I love all 3 of these games. I have all 3. They're next to each other on the shelf, and they're beautiful, right? They're not some bland or terrible looking moon game. You got Ian O'Toole artwork here again, and Osprey Games production, which is fantastic. I will say, as is the case with all of these, they're kind of expensive. Osprey Games puts together a very nice production, but they also charge a lot of money for it. So if you look at it, you're like, oh, that looks like an Ian O'Toole or like a Vital Lacerda game. Yeah, it does, and it kind of costs the same amount. So not quite that much, but it's up there. But it is fantastic. So IR Children of the Sun. It's my favorite Euro of the year. It won our best strategy game because I pushed real hard for it. And it's just it's a fantastic experience. And it's not super heavy, right? It's not. Sankore is a game that I really, really, really enjoy, but I have to kind of reread the rulebook every time, like a Lacerda. And that's like the number one ding I can give any Lacerda game. It's why I don't have any Lacerda games in my top 10 is that every time I want to play one, I have to start from scratch effectively. Like the rules don't stick because there's too many caveats. Maybe the Gallerist I could sit down and play without having to reread the whole thing. So IR, Children of the Sun, it kind of fits that sweet spot. And number 1 this year, which is both a like the Elder Scrolls, is both an IP game and a 2.0. We have Star Trek Captain's Chair. So Star Trek Captain's Chair is a funny game because I bought Imperium Classics and Legends back in 2021 when they came out, right? Like one of them was sitting here waiting for me when I arrived in Philadelphia when we moved. Like I had shipped it here. It came in the mail. And I never played them. I tried to several times. I sat down with the rule book. I tried to work my way through it and just never really could. It was just poorly written. And so many caveats. I don't know. It was just one of those games I looked at. I'm like, it's just too complicated. And then a friend back in Pittsburgh was like, this is the best game ever made. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I really should play this. And I just still never really got around to it. And then they said they're making a Star Trek version of that. David Turczi, Nigel Buckle, like, we're going to take those rules. We're going to re-implement them on Star Trek. It's a 2-player only game now. It doesn't play to 4. Imperium really was a 1 to 2 player game anyways. Um, and the result was this Captain's Chair. And I still didn't pick it up because Imperium was like rooting around in the back of my head. Um, but a friend of mine did and wanted to play it, invited me over, and I played with them, and I fell in love instantly. I went home and I ordered it immediately. It's like, this game is fantastic. Um, you play as one of 6 different captains from throughout Star Trek, and it's from like all different series of the show. Um, and they're not, other than like Picard, they're not really the captains you'd expect, which are coming in expansions later because, of course. Um, and you are building up your little crew of people, right? So you put out ships, you go explore, you bring people onto the board ship, you put somebody in charge, like your first officer. You pull up different allies and people that you meet, different species. And the thing that's really difficult about the game is every card can do a bunch of stuff. It can be an action or it could be something that goes into play sometimes. Some can attack things, some can power them up. You have different types of abilities that trigger at different times. You'll at some point have a really big tableau. All those cards have different abilities you have to keep track of and they trigger at different times. So it's a tableau builder, right? But at the same time, it's also like an engine builder and half a dozen other things on top of that. So like I can teach the rules to this game in about 10 or 15 minutes. It's really not that complicated. Like you have a hand, you pull from, it's a deck builder, you pull from the cards in your deck, you play them out, you take all your actions, goes the other player, right? You do everything on your turn and then you're done, right? Um, the complexity comes in with how those cards interact with each other, and the fact that some of them stay in play, unlike a deck builder. And it's just such an interesting, fascinating game. Each different captain and their faction plays very differently. Obviously, Picard and the Federation is going to be played more like diplomacy and exploration, whereas the Klingons, they attack stuff. Romulans also attack stuff, and they're spies. Um, so and they scale up too. Like the back of the book tells you, like these are the difficulty levels. Like if you're playing for the first time, use Picard. If you're playing for like the 6th time, use Michael Burnham from Discovery. Uh, and that, you know, and once you get to that point, you can't even use one of the core resources in the game because it's kind of broken. And you have to unbreak it based on like how the show plays out. I've played every faction in this game 2 or 3 times solo. I've taught this game to 3 different people. I've played with several different people. It's fantastic. It's my most played game of the year, and it's not short. Like usually, my most played game of the year is a game like Harmonies or Cascadia. This year, it's Star Trek Captain's Chair, and a solo play still takes 90 minutes to 2 hours. So yeah, I've brought this with me on I think every trip that I've left the house for, where I thought I was going to play games. So if I go on a writing retreat, went to a board game convention, brought it to PAX, Chris, it is fantastic. And when I mentioned at the beginning, like I have 2 games that maybe will make my top 100, this is one of them. This is definitely going to be up there, probably in the top 50. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to the new content. And I have gone back and played Imperium, and it is very good. But this one streamlines a few things, and it makes it a little more um, thematically consistent. In Imperium, you're playing as like civilization factions, sometimes mythical. You're playing as these different factions that represent different parts of like history, right? And so they have thematic elements, but unless you're a big history buff, you may not know that, right? You're like, you don't really know what you're looking at. Um, and at the same time, those thematic elements don't always overlap, right? Whereas Star Trek Captain's Chair, they all do overlap because those factions all interact with each other in the same space within the shows and the movies. So I it just really, and I'm not even a huge Trekkie. I just know of them. So, and it's enough for me. So Star Trek Captain's Chair, one of the best 1-2 player tableau builder card type games I've played in a very long time. Absolutely love it. We'll be picking up those expansions if they ever arrive. There you have it, folks. That's my top 10 for 2025. I did mention 2 making my top 100. Like I said, Star Trek Captain's Chair will be up there. I think the other one is probably likely to be the Elder Scrolls. I know it's my number 4 this year, but that's probably just because I played it so late in the year. There's a lot of content here. I've only chipped at it. Like I haven't really completed a full campaign yet. The couple times I got to the end, I died. There are 4 or 5 books. I think 4 books out of the box for different maps and parts of the world. There's an expansion already for another part. There was crowdfunding campaign earlier this year for even more parts. There's a ton of content here, and so if I keep playing this and keep coming back to it, this will just keep rising on the list. That's not to say none of these other games could. I love all these games, but because a lot of them are 2.0s, like the Anarchy, it's great. This could make my list. It'd probably bump off another Roll and Write. I'd have to think about it. IR Children of the Sun is fantastic, but I already have Merv and Senkori on my list. Is it better than either of those? I don't know. A Place for All My Books. Really love this quirky little game. I'd have to play it a lot more to see, if it lands up higher. So yeah, it's one of those years. Not a bad year by any means. These games are all amazing. But it's just nothing like hit me over the head quite as hard as Voidfall, right? Star Trek Captain Share came close, but it didn't sit on my table for a month. I didn't pour over it every night after work. So there you have it, folks. My top 10. Thank you for listening. Check this out on the website if you want to read it as well. And stay tuned for my other top 10 lists, which will be coming here in the next couple weeks. Right. Thank you so much.